All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Off the Platform. I'm Greg, and I'm joined as always by Jackson. How are you, Jackson?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Greg. How you going?
Good, thanks, mate. Now we are joined today by a very special guest, Dr. Russell Kern. Russell, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Now, for those, it's very hard to find Dr. Kern's profile on social media. He keeps a fairly low profile from all accounts, but for those who are thinking that name sounds very familiar, Russell's involved in obviously the Kern US Open, where he's the founder. He's also founder of the California Elite Training Center. Now, we had Gracie on earlier and Mariana, obviously. So you'll all be aware of the California Elite Training Center. He's also father of two, and he's got a PhD in neuroscience. He's the world's #1 stem cell transplantologist. I was hoping I wouldn't stuff that up. Transplantologist. And last of all, president of the WRPF in the US. Now, Russell, love to hear more about. So tell us a bit about your history and past, and before we get to talking about powerlifting.
Oh, sure. Well, I was born and raised in Moscow, Russia, and first I was very interested in computer science, but then something happened to me, and I decided to switch my interest to neurobiology. And I got my PhD in neuroscience. I was studying Parkinson disease. It was a very interesting project together with New York University Medical School. And I was a student of Russian Academy of Medical Sciences. So that's how I started. After I defended my PhD, I moved to the US, to the East Coast, New York, Boston. And then I can tell it was very nice. New York and Boston, great cities. However, they're pretty cold in winter and way colder than Moscow. I know some people think that Moscow and Russia is very cold, but well, it cannot be compared to Boston or New York in winter.
Interesting.
By accident, basically, I went to California, to San Diego, and well, I loved almost everything there and decided to move there. So there was a company that invited me to work on a neuroscience project, actually, for Parkinson disease. It was a very interesting project. They wanted to develop some therapy based on stem cells to treat Parkinson disease. So, of course, it was very interesting for me, and I joined the company, and that's how basically I appeared in San Diego. That's where I met Gracie, and the whole powerlifting story started.
Excellent. Now, you've mentioned stem cells, and I've got a basic understanding of stem cells. Jackson, I don't know if you've got an understanding of stem cells.
Very, very basic.
Very basic, yeah. Russell, could you give us the layman's version of what a stem cell is?
Well, yes, of course, and that's very interesting because actually now we conduct clinical trial in Australia, in Melbourne, for Parkinson disease with stem cells. So, well, stem cells basically it's precursor cells of all cells in the human body, and there are different types of stem cells. They can be neural stem cells, they can be liver stem cells, there are all kinds of stem cells. And when we are still adults, we still have a lot of stem cells. They're called organ-specific stem cells. However, while we're aging, we have less and less cells. And that's one of the theories why actually we age. Because, we use our stem cells to regenerate our body. Because regular cells, like adult cells that we have, skin cells, liver cells, they can divide only limited amount of times. So after they divided that amount of time, then what happened? They die. So where we get new cells? Well, we get them from our own, body specific or organ specific stem cells. And then once this pool of stem cells is gone, well, basically we die from aging or, I would say related diseases, maybe heart attack or something, or,
Yeah.
And that's also talking about the genetics a little bit. That's why, in sport, why there are certain talented people or genetically gifted people. Well, because they may have, and again, this is scientific speculation. No one knows. There is no proven theory why we age or something like that. But some people can, for example, simple example, they can drink, they can eat a lot of unhealthy food, and their liver is perfect, And some people, barely do anything harmful to their liver, and they have a lot of issues with their liver. Well, one of the reasons the main reason that their liver cannot regenerate, and probably because they don't have enough organ-specific stem cells, and that can be one of the issues. So stem cells are very critical for the human body. For example, in Parkinson disease, there is a certain problem that certain neural cells are absent, and what we're trying to do, we're trying to transplant neural stem cells so they will become, neural stem cells and regenerate the brain. So that's kind of the general theory.
Do you have to, can you transplant stem cells from donors, or does it have to be from family members? Or I recall stem cells can be harvested at birth, can't they, from the umbilical cord and stored?
Well, it's actually a great question. There are different ways. What we do, for example, we have donors who donate, there's a pretty complicated technology how we receive stem cells. They're not embryonic stem cells, but they're kind of similar in a way. And then we transplant them. However, there can be potential issues with immune matching. Thank God, brain is a relatively immune privileged site, so that's not a problem. However, for some organs, it can be a problem. Umbilical cord blood can be a great source. I mean, there can be different sources, and I think up to a point, all of them may work for different, diseases or different organs.
Yeah. Now, I'm familiar with stem cells are used in the regeneration of tissues with injuries as well. I recall one of a bodybuilder, Dave Palumbo, very popular, does a lot of media now. He's had stem cell therapy to repair tissues in his shoulder. Now, are you familiar with the use of stem cells in sports therapy and injury rehabilitation?
A little bit. It was my interest. To be honest, I never conducted research in that area. However, of course, it's very interesting for me. And yes, theoretically, they may work, and I know practically they also work. Yeah. However, we should be super careful because there are a lot of doctors out there who does stem cell therapy without proper clinical trials or approval from, appropriate governing agencies. Yeah. And that's because stem cells, they can harm body as well. Because as I said, they can become any cells of the body. And you don't want to have, heart cells in your shoulder or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a nice example. It can be tumor cells, can be anything. So that's why we should be very careful. It's a very powerful tool. If it's used properly, it's great. If not, it can be very harmful.
Interesting.
Yeah, you see a lot of it these days, the people going down to like South America and stuff. I know Joe Rogan's talked about it as well on his podcast a lot. He had it for his shoulder as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it can work. I know some great examples when therapy worked, and I know horrible examples when it didn't work and caused a lot of health issues.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. That's an interesting one. So would that be, so you say how there's stem cells like that are organ specific. So would that be the doctor making a mistake and getting organ-specific stem cells and not the sort of like origin stem cells that can then transform into organ-specific stem cells.
Exactly. Absolutely right. And unfortunately, I saw, examples when people travel to Mexico, because, obviously San Diego is almost on the border with Mexico. They travel for some stem cell therapies, and they got, transplantation of not organ-specific stem cells, but, kind of more kind of original stem cells, and they got horrible results. Like they had there was a patient who had spine injury, and he got transplant into the spine of stem cells, and it just caused a lot of problems.
So
because they were not specific to that area.
So in theory, would that then almost be creating, like you say, like a tumor? So it would almost be like transplanting cells into someone that would then create cancer.
Exactly. Absolutely right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
and I can tell you, before getting approval to start a clinical trial, we conducted a lot of studies. And the main focus, and actually I would say the main focus of all clinical studies and preclinical studies, it's safety. Of course, efficacy is super important, and of course, but if there is no safety, that's it. It's done. No one cares about efficacy if there is no safety.
Yeah.
Now, Russell, do you think stem cells will play a role in the future with sports performance? People looking for the edge, and
for sure, yes. And I think in the powerlifting or any kinds of weightlifting, it will play a huge role. And in any sport, because let's talk about powerlifting, like Wilks, score, how much it went up in the recent years. And I'm sure it will be going up and up. And because I hope the sport will become more professional. And obviously, it will cause a lot of trauma among people. It will cause a lot of injuries because not everyone can keep up. So I think the solution would be stem cells or something, relatively similar to this to fix the problems.
So in terms of
actually bring people back from injuries as well.
Yeah.
In terms of that, for obviously, we're not fussed on tested versus untested, but in terms of like, say, the tested community, say for the Olympics, say for sprinting or discus or swimming, etc., obviously then stem cells can improve performance as such because it can make you recover from an injury much faster. So then how, in theory, things like growth hormone and stuff at the moment, they really struggle to test for. Would there be any way that they could test for stem cell therapy?
Actually, a very interesting question. Well, on top of just stem cell therapy to recover, it's theoretically possible to transplant stem cells that would be genetically modified and would give actually a better performance. What if you just think about, how bodybuilders sometimes inject synthol, right, in their muscles? Well, what will you inject the muscle cells that would be genetically modified, or it's like stem cells specific, to that area that would be genetically modified and will create huge muscles. That's all possible, again, theoretically, but I think practically it will be possible very soon too.
That's insane. And there would be no way to tell as such, because like you say, that the stem cells then sort of turn into the cells of whatever they've been injected into, and then they're identical.
I might grab some of Jackson. I might grab some of your stem cells from your quads.
Mate, we can be part of the trial.
Then maybe I can start squatting over 400. Yeah.
Yeah, just get stem cell transplantation, and you can squat as many plates as you want.
Exactly. Next time I see Dan Bell, I think I might take some of his stem cells.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, man. That like you could, that you could almost modify yourself, year to year.
That was it's always been a
Yep.
question in my mind about what the next frontier is. Because obviously in powerlifting, we have tested versus untested, and it's been going now, what, 30, 40 years. And I personally wonder, what does the next 10 to 20 years in powerlifting look like? And obviously the Olympics, it's obviously tested, very rigorously tested, but that battle continues. And we had actually a drug testing organization on this podcast a few weeks ago, and with the Olympics, at least, they're holding on to samples and uncovering, people that have cheated 7-8 years, if not more, past the date. But by then, they've already enjoyed 7-8 years worth of winning and sponsorships and opportunities. And so it's not as effective, is it? So what does the next 20 years look like for strength sports, especially?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I think my personal opinion on this, if everything has the same possibilities or opportunities, it's okay. It's not cheating, basically.
Yeah.
If some people try to compete who, clean against, who are, let's say, not tested, or let's put it this way, it's kind of cheating, right? I mean, it's not right.
Yeah.
I think and then another thing, what is the purpose of the sport, of any sport, actually?
Yeah.
I mean, what is this? Is it just to show how strong you can be, like, just push how much you can push the limits of your body, or it's more like entertainment? I mean, what is it? Because based on that, we can talk about what is ethically not tested or non-tested.
Yeah.
I saw an interesting take on that whole debate about what a sport is recently, and it was more a case of that the sports these days are actually just games. That a sport in theory would be like, because people were trying to say powerlifting wasn't a sport, but in theory it's actually, from what this person was saying, I can't remember who it was, but they were saying that it's almost one of the purest forms of sport, because you're just trying to push one aspect of fitness as far as you can competitively. Whereas something like football or cricket, etc., is more of a game.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think it's definitely a hard one. Yeah, what is the purpose of the sport that you're doing? Yeah, is it entertainment like the NFL or Major League Baseball? They're more entertainment, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, soccer. I mean, I mean, of course, up to a point they push the limits, right? But I mean, not that much. So it's more like entertain the people. I mean, I would say probably all the sports that bring a lot of money, that's more entertainment, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Now, Russell, your introduction to powerlifting, did that begin in Russia or did it begin in the US?
Excuse, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Oh, your introduction to powerlifting, did you we always and here in New Zealand, I can't speak for every country, but we always have this picture of Russia being the home of powerlifting, a national sport. Were you introduced to powerlifting in Russia, or was it not until you arrived?
Actually, it was in the United States. Even Gracie introduced me to the powerlifting and the whole community, I would say. That's how I started, and that's basically how I fall in love with powerlifting, because of the people in the sport.
Yeah.
And their values, like their mindset. That's what I really, really like. And of course, and I was going back and forth. There was a period of my life when I was going back and forth between Russia and US because of business. And then I started to learn more about powerlifting in Russia. But the original introduction was actually in the United States.
Interesting. And at what point did you then decide to invest and run or become involved in competitions?
Well, first, when I started to powerlift myself, I realized that there are not a lot of places for powerlifting in San Diego. I mean, yeah, there are gyms, but they're not that amazing, I would say. They're pretty good for powerlifting, but it can be a little bit better, I would say. So that's why I started the gym, California Elite Training Center, where my goal was to create like a great environment for people who want to powerlift, and without any limitations. You have, obviously platforms, you have, everything you need, but also you have different machines, like you can work on, different group of muscles, and, that's kind of a gym. It's not like a regular gym, but it's like main focus powerlifting and a little bit of accessories and, kind of to work on certain muscles, if you feel that, have certain weaknesses.
That's definitely been a theme over the last sort of, I suppose, 5-8 years as powerlifting's become more popular. More of the sort of powerlifting specific gyms have opened up for sure. I mean, we have a gym here that I train at in Christchurch in New Zealand called Bodycore, and it's very similar to what you've tried to do with California Elite Training Center, in that we have all the stuff for powerlifters to train to an elite level, but also the machines and dumbbells and cables, etc., to fit all the other training styles as well, and to work on the accessory movements. So why do you think those sorts of gyms have started to come up nowadays? Is it just the rise in popularity in powerlifting?
Well, I think powerlifting is very popular in reality. It's just people, they don't know about it, basically. How many people talk about squat? How many people talk about bench press, right? I mean, maybe less people talk about deadlift, even though that's my favorite exercise.
Yeah, same.
But, it's very hard not to love it, right?
Yeah,
well, it's so easy. You just got to pick the bar up, don't you?
Exactly. Just lift. It's really lift.
Just lift it up.
There is one movement. Just lift it up. Exactly. Sounds very simple.
In theory.
Yeah. Exactly.
It is odd, because like the first thing you get out of someone when they see that you go to the gym or whatever, they're like, "Oh, how much can you bench press?" It's always the first question.
True. So I think, and it's just many people, they basically don't know that that's powerlifting. And I think once, we have more focus, well, that guy's actually powerlifting. That's, if you like this exercise, it's just, you can focus on them. It's actually sport, and it's very amazing. And the community of powerlifters is very amazing too. And I think once, the more gyms opening up and people get more familiar with powerlifting, more and more people realize that it's actually pretty interesting and they actually love it. They just didn't know about it.
Yes, yeah, it's one of those ones that so I suppose this goes back to our discussion before about the sport versus entertainment. It's realistically, if you don't do powerlifting or you don't know someone that's doing it, to the outsider, to the general public, it's quite boring, because it's just a bar. They have no comprehension of what the weights are on the bar. That to them, 100 kilos, 200 kilos, 300 kilos, it all sounds the same. It all sounds heavy. You know what I mean? So I think, exactly. Whereas when you then bring the entertainment to it, because I mean, we've all been to those powerlifting competitions before that are just boring. It's quiet. There's no atmosphere, etc. Which I think you guys have obviously leveled up with the US Open in terms of entertainment on top of the sport.
Well, yes, and the reason why I started the US Open, because, well, as I said, I basically fall in love with the community, and I was thinking, well, it's amazing sport. What can I do? I can try to make it more professional. And what's professional sport is? I mean, what is it? Well, it's when people can make money from it, right? From competing.
Yeah.
And not from only teaching or being, like instructors, but I mean, like actually from competing. And then it will be, if it's professional, it will be more popular. It will involve more people. And the more people, will be involved, the more people will understand, what these plates mean. Basically, if it's like 5 plates, 4 plates, 8 plates on a bar, whether it's heavy or not, they can relate, because then they will be able to relate. So that's how it all started. And that was one of the goals. Another goal actually was, why it's not very entertaining, or why it was not very entertaining to watch. Because, strong powerlifters, sometimes they compete basically in their own meets, their competitions. They not very often, they used to kind of go to one meet and compete there against each other. Because now it becomes, it's not only physical, but it's also a lot of, mind. And, like when it's so entertaining to see how people calculate, Wilks score at the US Open. It's like, okay, what weight should I take now? And other things. That's kind of starting to be more interesting.
Yeah,
so I wanted to bring this, these amazing athletes, on one platform, and to make them compete against each other. I'm sorry, it's like Olympics. I mean, if you're a professional athlete, you compete at one big tournament, right? At least, where you can compete against each other.
Yeah, it's that's what it's about. It's about competition. You can't be the best if you're not competing against the best.
Exactly.
In terms of a sport, we're actually running. I was just talking about it with Greg before. I'm actually running a much smaller version, obviously, of the US Open, called the Wolfpack Invitational here in New Zealand in about 3 weeks' time. And so we're aiming to do the same, bring together, all the people from different federations, different sports, etc., from strongman, and put them all on the same platform together. And it makes it much more entertaining.
Cool. Exactly. Which makes it more popular, and which makes more people will be involved in this amazing sports, right?
100%. And then you get more of, it's like a snowball effect, because then you get more of those genetic the more people you get involved, the more of those genetic outliers you get involved in the sport, and they're like, oh, actually, I'm quite good at this. And then they carry on and they bring more people, and it's exponential, really, which I think is what's happened in the last 5 or 6 years or so since these sort of competitions have been around.
Yep, exactly.
Now,
absolutely true.
Russell, recently on another podcast, they had the president of the US APL talking about the big SBD event. What's the name of that event, Jackson? Do you remember?
Oh, Sheffield.
Sorry, the Sheffield. Yeah,
the Sheffield Classic.
Yeah, he talked, and one of the things he mentioned was the sustainability of investing money into these big events and not necessarily making a return on that investment. What do you think about that comment? Do you think professional powerlifting can be sustained when events are being run that don't necessarily generate an income?
Well, it's a very good question. Honestly, I prefer not to think about it, because as of now, it's not the best investment. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's more like a charity, I would say. And of course, probably there are ways to make it profitable by having like expo around or something, but I'm talking about now. Hopefully in the future, it can bring money, and, when it will be like sport that everyone knows, everyone watch, maybe. As of now, it's just, I wouldn't think about money. I just do it because I just like the community and I can do it. That's it.
That's great. Yeah. That was one of the questions I was curious about. I think Jackson and you and I would be in the same situation. If we had a bit of spare money, we'd definitely throw it into the events that we run to support the lifters and their sport.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a horrendous investment. Like even our meet in a few weeks, we're losing money. Like it's it's just the nature of the game. If you want to, there's not enough people that are interested. Like Russell said, it's definitely a tough one. But you've got it's sort of a chicken and the egg scenario. Like what comes first, the good comps to get it in people's faces, but then how do you get the people in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the sports like bodyboarding. The sheer numbers of people that bodyboarding. I mean, bodyboarding was the same years ago. It wouldn't have generated any income for promoters. But when you get 1,000 people over a 3, 4, 5 day period, you're probably going to make some money from that. Do you think Russell, you've got events like the Arnold competition or the Arnold weekend, where basically many of these sports, these fringe sports, have the opportunity to come under the one roof and showcase the talent of their athletes, because individually they may not have the finances behind them to be able to generate an event like that, or even generate the sort of interest from crowds. But when they all come together, they can achieve that. Do you think that's where powerlifting potentially could go or should go, almost like a festival of strength sports over a course of a period, not too dissimilar to the Olympics, but well, similar in some respects?
Yes, it's one of the potential options, and pretty viable options, I think, that should be considered. And I just want to let me give you a little bit more expanded answer. We're now focused on the federation a lot, because what we want to do, we want to have a really one standard for all the competitions. And by the way, talking about coming back to the US Open, well, one of the reasons was that, for example, I saw a lot of competitions where squats were very high. And it's not fair. Well, I mean, I don't care actually whether they're kind of relatively high or low, but it should be one standard. So it can be, measurable. So that's what I would like to do, like in the federation. So basically to keep high standards. And once, we will be able to achieve it, I think it will give pretty good boost to the powerlifting in the United States as well. Because then, yes, you can partner with some big expo, like do something like Arnold. And, you will not feel, uncomfortable that, at this competition squats were high or something went wrong or, they didn't correspond to the level. Because now it's still different events. There are different, it can be certain issues. And that's why actually I joined, I started the federation in the United States, because I want to make it like one standard.
Can you take us?
It will not hurt anyone.
No. Tell us about the WRPF. We don't have it yet. We don't have it here in New Zealand, but of course some of us are aware of the WRPF in the US. But it's a relatively new federation. Can you tell us a bit more about it and what it aims to achieve and what makes it different? Because we see 50 plus federations in the US, I think, at the very least. So
yeah,
is the WRPF, is it new, different? What does it offer?
Well, what we're trying to achieve, we have a few goals. Well, still the same goal as US Open, to make powerlifting more professional. It's our long-term goal. And I would say middle-term goal is to have one standard for all the meets. It should be quality meets, and starting from just the lifts itself, how people lift, how they judged, like everything, to the environment and everything. Because I know quite a lot of people who, attended the meets, or they saw their friends, were competing, and, they were just spectators. And they said, well, it's kind of nice, but the gym is so bad. It was so hot. Thank you. We don't want to compete. you know, and I understand them. I understand the gym owners perfectly. I mean, and because of the money situation and everything, it's like chicken and egg that, you know, we've just discussed. But, you know, just to make it more popular, the whole standard should go up. And I understand that supporting the community, supporting athletes, supporting gym owners, it's everything. Supporting, you know, referees. I mean, there are a lot of people who basically referee doing, you know, their job for free. And, you know, it's a very nice, but it cannot be a professional sport if some people work for free only, right?
Yep.
That's one of those
fair to them.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we I think we talked about it with Six Pack, Greg, but that over in Europe, they actually have a professional spot load team.
Yeah.
That they hire themselves out to competitions, and they have you know, they hire people and pay them, and they say, right, you're the designated side spotter. You know, you have to pass time trials to go up a level to be the center spotter, and then go and do certain level competitions, and they hire themselves out to meets.
Well, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, you've got someone like Dan Bell and people of that caliber squatting 500 kilos. You can't have a rookie spot load team.
No,
because somebody could die.
Exactly. Well, we've seen that before. I mean, there's been some world level events. I remember there was a big one when Ray Williams was squatting, you know, and the spotters. But I mean, I appreciate their time, but there was no way that they were going to catch 480 kilos if it fell off his back.
I don't know why the IPF continue with those, squats without the necessary safety equipment. It's look, I appreciate it makes for a cleaner looking lift when you don't have that big monstrosity of a monolift sitting on the platform. But as you say, 480 kilos or 500 kilos, where does it go when the lifter fails? You know, I don't think, unless you've got 5 strong individuals ready to catch that's not an easy catch, especially if it's at the bottom of the lift. You know, if somebody's deep in the hole and that falls forward, scary.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I mean, the sport should be safe. I mean, as much as possible. Any professional sport is pretty dangerous. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So let's try to minimize it. I mean, it's very important.
Well, it's part of the excitement, isn't it? It's part of the excitement watching somebody handle that amount of weight and knowing that the only thing controlling where that bar goes is that person maintaining the form, the strict form. Yeah. So Russell, just in terms of you've got the US Open, what other big events surround the WRPF throughout the year? And, you know, do you plan on introducing anything new? If you can tell us, not maybe later, but
yes. Well, we are, actually, a little bit of announcement here. We want to launch a professional. Well, there are different names we have for this tour, I would say, or, you know, championship. But basically, we want to create a professional division for powerlifting, and they will have their pro tour, you know, in certain, I would say at certain meets, at the largest competitions, and they will compete for pretty good money, and it will be, you know, they will compete with. I don't want to say less professional people, of course not, but I mean who are not, who doesn't have a pro card, but they will compete as kind of a little bit different league, and the purpose to create excitement, to make the sport more, you know, watchable, so there will be more eyes on this. There will be certain intrigue, because now, if we look at any competition as well, there is, you know, Wilk score or whatever, and there is, like, you know, basically one event. The kind of events are not connected. We have US Open, we have Showdown meet, which will be later this year. You know, we have few different meets, great, but in reality they're not connected. And I want to change a little bit the sport of powerlifting, where yes, people will be paid to compete, or like they will be paid not to compete, but they will be paid if they achieve certain results. But they need to compete a little bit more often. And it will be also interesting because, you know, if you have a tour, you know, with certain amount of competitions you need to attend, well, it's interesting. Are you going to attend less competitions but try for higher place to get more points, or you will attend maybe more competitions, but then you understand that you will not get, you know, as high, you know, position, and you will get less points per meet, but maybe in total it will be more. So it should create certain interest. And actually it will, I think, open up the road for, you know, other lifters who maybe not that strong in one meet, but they have kind of more strength, endurance. You know, they can compete more often and show also good result.
That's very exciting news, Russell. Does that mean there'll be a professional competition just for those with the pro card? Will there be a sort of a penultimate event at some point during the year?
Well, we're working with the details. The first year, I mean, this will be the first year, and of course we will mix. You know, they will compete at, you know, events where, you know, it's kind of all together. However, in the future we may separate them. I mean, we're working on the details, and we are welcome any feedback we will get, because, you know, we want to make it interesting for people to watch. We want to make it interesting for people to compete. So we'll see how it will go. I mean, originally, as of now, it will be like, for example, let's say showdown meet. You know, there will be people already registered, and there will be people who will have a pro card, and, you know, they will compete against each other, but kind of people with pro card also will compete just between them.
So it almost makes like like say how bodybuilding at the moment has a qualifying, you know, you need X amount of points or to win certain events to get to the Olympia. Is that sort of the direction you're picturing for powerlifting to go?
Yes, so there would be basically everyone, like, you know, let's say WRPF, you know, everyone can compete. Once you can get to a certain level, you can compete in qualifying events, and you can get your pro card. Once you get pro card, you can compete against people who has, you know, pro card, and then at the end, and it will be either something like, you know, Mr. Olympia, or just will be, you know, like basically based on all the results, you know, how many points you will get, you will be awarded the best lifter of the year, which obviously will come. It will be respectful title. It will come with, you know, nice trophies and pretty good money price.
Nice. That's exciting stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Are you looking at then making that just in the US, or are you looking at taking that internationally, potentially to Russia, or to some of the bigger competitions like Pro Raw, etc. in Australia?
Well, as of now, only United States, and it's only because of the COVID restrictions. You know, because there are a lot of amazing powerlifters all over the world, but if there are restrictions on traveling, you know, and like potential visa issues, it's kind of not fair, kind of to put everyone together, right? I mean, someone may want to attend the meet, but they cannot because of certain restrictions. So now it's the US only, but of course, if it will work, it would be nice to expand it, you know, the more, I would say, at least to Europe, Australia, you know, the more the better.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. I think that's a great. It just takes someone to do it, which is cool that you guys are going to be at the forefront of it, because it's you know, like Greg said, that's where bodybuilding was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you know. And
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of exciting work.
Yeah.
Now, Russell, how do you find the time to create a professional league in powerlifting, also with your stem cell work as well? Or have you got a great team underneath you?
Well, I can tell you powerlifting helps a lot because it's it's not only a hobby, but it's I like both. I like what I'm doing with stem cells, and I like powerlifting, and in a way they kind of balance, you know, the work aspect of my life, because science is nice, sport is nice, and it's kind of, they help each other. At least they help me mentally to work on both.
Fantastic. That's awesome. That's a fantastic announcement. We're really excited. We wish it all the best as well. That's great.
Yeah,
Jackson, do you have any more questions?
Well, I was going to say that's made me reconsider retiring. No, I'm kidding.
You can't retire. No. You're only 28.
But that's that's awesome. So what are you looking at starting that this year as such? So it would be like from the showdown later in the year as such?
Yes, that's the plan right now. We're working on the details because it would be nice to kind of have the first year, as a trial year, so we can, correct, later some errors and other things. So we'll start this year, but of course, next year will be, I would say, probably a better version of this year. We will add some rules. Now we're discussing a lot of rules, a lot of nuances, how to qualify, who can qualify, how many people, all of that. We need to figure it out, all the details. Okay, but definitely want to start this year.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably almost good to with the COVID restrictions, etc., and you just doing it in the US. Cause it's almost just like a small sample size, and you see how it works with a smaller, in a smaller population, and then if it works, then take it internationally rather than trying to hit the whole scene at once.
Yeah, for sure. We're all about quality. That's why we made WRPF in the United States. We want quality meets. We want to bring high quality to the powerlifting, and let's start slow.
Yeah.
Now, Russell, with the WRPF, to my understanding, there are some variations within the federation in terms of events. Any plans on introducing some of the alternative lifts that the WRPF offer, like the strict bicep curl, for example? Do you think that will ever make a splash or a scene, yeah?
What do you mean under alternatives?
I think that doesn't the WRPF have a few sister or sister affiliations or variations under the WRPF that offer different lifts? Like there's the strict bicep curl. I know it's one event, and there are some other events with alternative bars as well, to my understanding. Are you familiar with that or not?
Well, we have, the main kind of the home federation, World Pro Powerlifting Federation, is kind of based in Russia. However, and that it has different affiliates. However, the rules, we're very flexible with the rules. And it's pretty, I would say, open-minded federation. We're very flexible. We want to do the best for the community, and we're open to the feedback. So we're very, very flexible. There is a WRPF in Australia. WRPF. There is a certain affiliates in Europe. We just kind of start in different areas. WRPF Americas, we basically run WRPF for the North and South America. But again, powerlifting, I would say, developed differently in different countries and different regions, of course. So in certain countries, we just need to actually to introduce powerlifting to public. In certain countries, we just need to adjust it. But again, on their, history, on their, what they like, what they prefer, again, it's about the community.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Now, Jackson, do you have any more questions or?
Not really. This is awesome. It's great news for the powerlifting community as a whole across the world, and it's awesome that someone's taken the time to do it.
it just takes someone like Russell and the team to do this, isn't it? Yeah, to make a difference. Yeah,
for sure. What do you do in your downtime, Russell, if you have any? I've seen on your Instagram you do like some claybird shooting or.
Yeah, well, it's very hard for me to say. Like, I love everything I do so much that I don't really consider it as a work. It's just that's kind of life consists of these things. And yes, I mean, I like clay shooting. That's the sport. I practice. I have been practicing for a long time, but I can tell you up to a point, I'm more passionate about powerlifting, even though I don't powerlift myself that often, or I mean, I used to, but not anymore. I would say. I mean, it's just all sports are interesting, and actually, in a way, clay shooting has a lot of similarities with powerlifting, because it's not very interesting to watch, but it's very interesting for people who are in the sport.
Yeah.
Or to do. Yes, exactly. So kind of I learn from them what to do and what not to do to make it more popular.
Yeah, that's so yeah, I suppose so you've almost epitomized the if you enjoy what you do, you never seem to work a day in your life. Is that
exactly?
Is that pretty much you?
Yes.
That's awesome. That's living the dream then.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, Russell, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story, the WRPF story, and these exciting plans for a professional league within powerlifting, which is to Jackson and I long overdue. Long overdue, and I think it's definitely a game changer. And it's going to be an exciting few years ahead. Next year will be really exciting. This year will be exciting. We look forward to talking to you again, Russell, as well. We'd like to talk to you again when the professional league is up and running, and see if we can assist in any way in bringing it over to other parts of the world as well, maybe even New Zealand.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to your podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
okay, Russell.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll end it there. Now, Russell, if people need to get in touch with you, do you take calls from the public, or what's your social media?
Well,
we usually ask people what their social media is, but I know you're not you're a typical powerlifting guest. So tell us what you.
Well, that's okay. They can write to my Instagram. That's okay. I mean, it's fine. Or they can call Gracie. I mean, she's my assistant, and we work together. So it's either or works fine.
Fantastic. All right. Hey, thank you very much, Russell. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course.
Thanks, sir.
Bye.